Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is refusing to address the harm already caused by his country's 501 immigration policy.
He says he's confident in recent changes which will consider a deportee's connection to New Zealand. But our new Prime Minister Chris Hipkins says he wants more.
Political editor Jenna Lynch was with Hipkins as he travelled to Canberra.
Pumped about his first trip on the prime ministerial plane. Crossing the Tasman to catch up with old cobbers, the warmest of welcomes for Chris Hipkins. A traditional smoke cleansing ceremony before using the most traditional Aussie he knows to greet his new mate. Making fast friends, Chippy and Albo, the nicknamed Labour Bros.
Congratulations in person. What do you think of Albanese?
Oh, we got on really well.
There's more similarity than difference in the relationship of late, Albo the Aussie acting more like our cuzzy than his predecessor, moving to extend the rights of Kiwis living in Australia.
We would like to see New Zealanders living here in Australia treated similarly or the same as Australians living in New Zealand.
And finally addressing the long-standing beef, deporting to us Kiwi citizens with little to no connection to New Zealand.
What's changed is we will have a common sense approach and bear in mind what a person's ties are to Australia when assessing these cases.
Where we've seen examples of people who have no real connection to New Zealand, who have lived most of their lives in Australia, whose family ties, whose connections, whose employment history, whose homes are here in Australia, to have them being deported to New Zealand is an unjust and an unfair outcome.
But Australia unwilling to address the unfairness that's already occurred.
Would you consider any policy to retrospectively undo the hurt that's been caused by those already deported to New Zealand with little to no connection there?
No.
Isn't the change in policy an acknowledgement that what they were doing was wrong and therefore shouldn't that wrong be addressed?
And look, in due course, over time, I'm sure we'll continue to have those conversations.
The man who caused much of the pain in the relationship, once referring to deportees as trash.
Well, it's taking the trash out.
Peter Dutton, the former Home Affairs Minister and current opposition leader, today choosing a less contentious Trans-Tasman battle.
Particularly around rugby and cricket, where we can agree to disagree in a time-honoured tradition.
To welcome Hipkins in the House.
A very warm welcome to you both.
Stepping foot in the Australian debating chamber as Prime Minister before he's even done it back home.
Hadn't actually even thought of that until right about now, so I guess that's an interesting development.
Signing off on his first international trip as fast as he signed on.
Chris Hipkins and the New Zealand media are just about to head home from Canberra. And Jenna, before you jump on the plane, can you tell us, did anything concrete come out of his meeting?
Nothing to write home about, but there wasn't really expected to be. This trip was more about adhering to a kind of custom that prime ministers on either side of the Tasman new prime ministers on either side of the Tasman try and meet each other as soon as possible. Policy-wise, those changes to Kiwi rights in Australia, the deadline for that is set for Anzac Day, so we'll likely hear more of that in the coming months. And conveniently, Australia had just made those changes to the 501's policy, so there was no need for a Jacinda Ardern-style "don't deport your people and your problems" moment. The next meeting will be on home turf for Hipkins. Albanese, it is his turn to pop across the ditch for the more formal, official Trans-Tasman meeting. That'll happen kind of middle of the year, possibly in Wellington, and who knows, Hipkins might even want to take his new mate home to the hut.
Very good. Jenna Lynch, we'll let you board your plane live in Canberra. Thanks very much.